They announced it at E3 last year. There was a little bit of footage. Basically, it is there are segments of the game that are a straight up 3D shooter, but inside it, instead of having a standard indoor type claustrophobic, they'll have open settings as well. And there's also segments of the game where you're in cars racing through the apocalyptic wasteland. And so, you know, details about customizations, changes, that sort of stuff, that's all up in the air right now. But the fact is, it is, you know, got this new engine, and the footage I saw of the cars racing around looked fantastic. And then the guy gets out of his car and he's got the guns and he's taking out mutants. So I'm like, here, you got a potential big hit here, because people are going to buy the shooter part of it. And if the racing game is halfway competent at all, you've got a massive hit in the making here. Especially if you can race the cars online. You know, and if you can customize and do that. Indiana Jones is coming back. And if I got the title right, and see, the funny thing, when we get to the movie segment, almost every one of these games will have a movie comparison or tie-in, and you'll see that very soon. Indiana Jones and the Spirit Kings is in the developmental stage, and it looks very good. You know, it's a standard console. I saw a demo video of it from the Wii, and you know, taking on the Nazis, taking on the bad guys, Indiana Jones going everywhere. We mentioned Blizzard earlier, and we got Diablo 3 and Starcraft 2 in the works right now that hopefully will be coming in the not too distant future. Now, Starcraft 2 is actually going to be 3 games released a year apart. What they're going to do is they're going to give you a Terran campaign, a year later you'll get the Protoss campaign, and a year later you'll get the Zerg campaign. Now, I'm not sure the order of the Protoss and the Zerg, but that's what's going to happen. I'm told they're going to be 3 full games released accordingly. So, another thing you have, and this one's interesting, I got a good look at this at PAX. There was a game called Demigod, and it is a new style of real-time strategy game. And one of the things is you have these celestial powers and very interesting power-ups. And once again, we got to do an interview for this, and they can have a much greater discussion on that online, you know, on the website. Suffice it to say, it is not so much the let's gather everything, rush the units, and blow them up. You have to do strategy. You have to have a lot more cunning and you know, alliances, betrayal, that sort of thing to it. It's in an early stage of the game, but it looked intriguing from the standpoint of it was very different from a lot of the other stuff that we saw. And you know, wrapping up with this before we get to the movie stuff, Rock Band are going to be doing a Beatles version, so it'll be Rock Band Beatles. You'll see that very soon. And I mentioned Uwe for a reason now. A lot of people have blasted Uwe about his video games to movies, and you know, he's told me some interesting stories. Basically, the gist of it is when you get the rights to the game, you often get the rights to the name of the thing and some characters, but they're very protected. Like, for example, with Far Cry. They let them get Far Cry, they let them have the name Jack Carver, but they couldn't call the mutants by the same name. You couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do that. The storylines have to appear a certain way so they don't infringe on, you know, future possibilities in the gaming series. Well, he's been moving toward original films, and one of them was the horror film Seed, which, if you haven't seen it, was actually pretty decent as horror films go. It was very interesting. He's got a Vietnam War, film coming out called Tunnel Rats, which talks about the tunnel warfare that was done in Vietnam. Well, one of the ideas that he was kicking around and they put it in development was he's going to actually make a video game now based on one of his movies instead of the other way around. So they have a first-person shooter in development for his film. You've seen Resident Evil 5, which is being demoed over at the PlayStation 3 booth. That looks really good. We'll be talking about Resident Evil 4 in the not-too-distant future here. Waznted, you remember that from Universal, Angelina Jolie? They've got, Warner Brothers has got a game in development, and yes, you're going to curve the bullets. So if there's a multiplayer portion, you can imagine how much fun that's going to be, trying to curve bullets around and take people out. And I mentioned World in Conflict earlier, and there was a game called World in Conflict Soviet Assault, which was the next chapter in the series. And you know, we even got so far, we got an interview for that, we put it up on the site, and then of course that got fell victim to the changing dynamics of Vivendi, being absorbed, becoming part of the Activision Blizzard merger. Well, I can tell you now, apparently Ubisoft has picked it up, so you will see World in Conflict Soviet Assault now being released by Ubisoft. So we have completed the gaming portion right now. That's not bad. We still have an hour and 15 minutes, and we've got about 2 hours worth of movie stuff to get through. So before we get on to that, and we'll of course be able to wrap up and do any gaming questions later. Any quick questions? Yes?
Does Uwe still box?
Yes, yes, he's a very avid amateur boxer. He still does it, although I did ask him, and I said, are you going to do another one of those SmackDowns? And he's like, no. And then right after he told me that, apparently there were some reports that he was trying to challenge Michael Bay to boxing.
Oh,
and Michael Bay wouldn't do it because, you know, his argument is that, look, at least I'm trying to do something different, and I'm not given the same, you know, prepackaged nonsense that Hollywood is cranking out all the time. And he's like, you know, if you don't like my films, that's fine, but don't sit there and go on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and give them zeros before you haven't seen them based on reputation. Because, you know, in fairness, I do think each of his films has been better than the last one before it. And he is, you know, he is working completely independent of Hollywood through, you know, private investors, and some of it works, some of it doesn't. But you know, the way I look at it is there is a place for this stuff on the direct-to-DVD. Sometimes you sit down there like as we in the Name of the King. You know, my wife, you know, not a big fan of this kind of stuff. We sat down and watched a DVD one day, and she said, you know, for what it was entertaining. For a lazy Sunday rainy afternoon, sitting at home watching, why not? I was entertained. And I think, you know, that again comes the big question, which is the whole mass exodus in Hollywood now. Are you going to pay $10 to see it in a theater when you can pay $15 and own it on the DVD and get all the bonus and extra features? So that's kind of why people aren't going to the box office, but someone's buying all these DVDs because he sells them out, and you know, all of his films have made profit, so go figure. Anyway, we're going to transition into the movie stuff because things are...
Yeah, one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any kind of a date for Tunnel Rats?
I asked that just last week. They haven't said yet. It's still up. It's still up in the air. See, one of the things you have to understand is that the films are done, but they get released differently. You know, like for example, Far Cry has been released in Germany already because Till Schweiger is the is the lead. Udo Kier is the bad guy. These are big German actors, so naturally you're going to release it in a country where they, you know, big name box office they'll draw. Tunnel Rats has appeared at a few film festivals yet, but they have not set. It may be a DVD release here. You know, these things are all being sorted. I mean, to give you an idea, I haven't even seen it yet, and we're on the list for it, so hopefully soon. But getting into the movies, this is one I've been waiting for a long time, and thankfully it is finally moving forward. They are making a prequel to The Thing. And it will, and this is the interesting thing about it, I've heard it is a prequel with sequel elements to it. Now what I'm told is that one of the characters that will appear in the film is actually the brother of Kurt Russell's character, the younger McCready. I've heard rumors that this will actually be what happened at the Norwegian base prior to the events in the first film. And one of the great things about this is when you look at how intriguing that film was with all of the, you know, the high-tech effects. Those were done with basically corn syrup, rubber, and stick puppets. Now they can do it with CGI. And now there's no limits to what they can create and what they can do. So I'm very curious to see how this will come out. Also, Martin Campbell, who has directed some of the Bond films, is going to be apparently interested in directing the film version of Green Lantern, which is quite interesting because we were recently told as of 2 months ago that many of the DC adaptations of films have been put on hold over at Warner Brothers, so we're hoping that'll move forward. Now, several films that you'll be seeing very soon. I'll tell you some interesting things about them. For example, Friday the 13th, we get to screen that tomorrow night. Interesting fact, Nana Visitor, who played Major Kira on Deep Space Nine, is playing Jason's mother. So I am told this film actually is the first 3 Friday the 13ths, in essence, boiled down into one film and remade for a new generation. A lot of people are really looking forward to this, so we're hoping we're going to see how that goes over tomorrow. There's talk of a Men in Black 3 in the works right now if Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith can get their schedules to mesh up. There's another Street Fighter, again, Legend Chun-Li. Now the Watchmen lawsuit is over, so it is moving forward, and there is a Watchmen video game in the works right now.